Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. First off, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I hope everybody's doing well. So thumbnail, that's third video on this 8.8 rear end. If you're watching this, thanks a lot. I appreciate it, but I'm sure most of you don't really care much about this. But for those of you who do, I'm doing this for you guys, or gals for that matter. I've got the etch primer scuffed down. It's been about a week since I made the last video. This past weekend I did yard work, pressure washed around the pool, pressure washed the back porch and all that other stuff. Honey-do list stuff. So didn't get anything done this weekend. So I got the rear end scuffed down. I'm basically going to use VHT single stage rattle can gloss black on this housing. Should turn out super nice. I'll show you what it looks like right now. I'm not going to videotape me. Spray can it with a spray can. If you can't use a rattle can, I don't know what to say about that. But anyway, yeah, so I'll show you what it looks like real quick and let me know what y'all think. Alright, so this is the housing right here. We got it all scuffed down, ready to paint. Now the bolts are not in the cover. I normally do that last. I will paint the cover once, but I'll blend in the bolts once the axles and everything are back in it, so there's no scratches on the bolts or anything like that. So that's what it looks like right now. Basically just etch prime, nothing special. All right, so I'm going to shake this rattle can up a little bit, get some gloss black put on it, and then I'll show you guys what that looks like. Again, like I said, I'm just using VHT engine enamel high temp paint. Basically used that on all the rear ends I've done before now. Look super nice. So let me get this done and I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. Alright, so that took about 10 or 15 minutes with rattle can. I think it looks super nice for rattle can. Just about ate that whole can up though, which is kind of weird. I remember a couple years ago I could use maybe enough, one can to take probably 2 rear ends to do, 2 cans. One can would last me 2 rear ends back in the day. Another thing they're skipping on, I guess. So let's check it out real quick and let me know what y'all think. Bam! Look at that shit. Yes, that's rattle can. Promise you. So let's see. I'll get the front here real quick. Housing looks super nice once you get all the new brake lines and get the backing plates all redone. Like I said, those pits, maybe I should have filled them in a little bit with some filler. Ain't too bad. So I think it looks awesome. So yeah, see real quick. It's almost empty now. I think that's some shit. All I do is paint one rim housing. So if you're still watching this kind of build series on this 8.8, next up I'm going to do the backing plates that the calipers bolt to. They're really rusty. I'm going to show you how to clean those next. And so far, let me know what you think about the rear end. I think it looks super nice. Once we get it all back together, get all brakes and calipers on it, this bitch ought to look amazing underneath the car. I think one kind of comment about the bottom of the car when I was doing it. What doesn't matter? You can't see it. It matters to me. I like doing stuff right. I like it to look right. If I'm going to do it, I might as well clean it up and make it look right. Even if I sell the car, maybe for the next person. So let me know what you think so far. I think it's really good. I'm going to go ahead and get these backing plates, get all that set up, show you how I clean those, and yeah, let's keep trucking. All right, so we're back on this rear end again today. As you can see, different shirt, different day. So today I'm going to show you, I'm going to clean up caliper mounting brackets that go on axle housing that the caliper bracket bolts to. I'm going to show you what I use to clean that. I know a lot of people say, oh, I can get them sandblasted, but if you don't have access to a sandblaster, this shit works awesome. It's a Rust-Oleum rust dissolve. I found this stuff, it's been around for a long time, but I haven't used it but for probably 4 years, and this shit works amazing. You basically take your rusty bolts, brackets, put it in the thing and let it set for about an hour or two, come back, clean it off with a little bristle brush, see how much you got left, and most of the time an hour will clean up most anything. I wouldn't leave it in there probably longer than 2 or 3 hours without cleaning it off and inspecting the threads and make sure you ain't needing too much material. So without flapping my lips too much, I'll show you these brackets real quick and I'll show you what this one looks like. I've cleaned one. The other one I didn't clean. I cleaned all the bolts for the rear end to put it back together, except for one quad shock bracket bolt. I'll show you how rusty it was compared to what it is. Now I'll also go back, if you got any flash rust from, if they say the bolts set a day or two after you clean them, before I paint the bolts, I'll go back with a wire wheel and just hit them to knock off some flash rust or whatever. Maybe still stuck to the part of the nut or the bolt you're painting. So let's check these out real quick. All right, so this right here is the one I cleaned. It's not sandblasted, as you can see. Now there's a little bit still right here. I'm gonna hit this with a wire or a roll lock disc on a side grinder and knock all that off. But now I could have left it in there longer and it would have ate all that off, because that's what that one looked like. You can see how bad it was. Now, I worked it with a bristle brush. This one right here. There's a rust dissolve. Just a little bucket from Walmart or Target or whatever. Now, you can reuse this stuff. I normally use a little drain thing on top of the can right there and a rag and filter it through to get all the nasty shit out of it, because that stuff is $30 for a jug now. It's out of control like everything else. Now, here's all the bolts. I got all of them nice and clean. Now, you might see a couple little, like right here, some residual that didn't get off. I don't like to leave these fine thread bolts in there a long time because it will eat some of the threads off. And there is the quad shot bolt. You see how bad it was compared to how clean it looks now. So yeah, that looks pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and soak this one in this bucket for about a half hour and see how it cleans up, while I'm gonna clean this up and show you what paint I use on this one and kind of how I do these. So if you want to keep watching this video, see how it turns out, hang with me and we'll get these done. All right, so I got my little roll lock, little buffing disc on a side grinder. They do make a smaller one of these, but I found out at Harbor Freight these are the same price as the small ones, and there's more pads, so go figure. Now, basically what I do, it's already cleaned up. It's already got the rust off of it. Down here in the back, I try to get all this off where the caliper and the caliper bracket sits. Get it down to the nice shiny material. Also, see how nice that looks now? Got nice shiny metal right there. I'm gonna do the backing plate area where it bolts up to the axle housing, and I'm gonna do the front side right here where it bolts up to the caliper bracket. See, that didn't take long at all. See how nice and clean that is now compared to what it was. Now, you can paint this when you paint the caliper bracket. I'm going to paint these gold so it looks anodized, or whatever you want to call it. In the front, I'm going to do this down through here as well with the caliper bolts. Now, keep in mind, it's just a burgundy Scotch-Brite. I'm not taking any material off. I'm basically just shining it up. You can go over this as well, just a little bit before you paint. Now, you're probably thinking, why not just do that instead of soaking it in that rust dissolve? Mainly because the rust that's down in these little pinholes, you're not going to be able to grind this out. They're going to be down in there and always going to come back. So now that I've got this cleaned out, now what I normally do once I take it out of the rust dissolve, I've got an old filter for my swimming pool, just old, shit catcher. Now if you don't have a swimming pool, maybe you can use your wife's noodle strainer. Just don't let her know. And maybe get one. You don't want to kill nobody. So maybe put these in the water bucket, clean up water, blow it off nice and dry. You can also take brake parts cleaner, carb cleaner, rinse it off, and then blow it dry with an air hose, with an air blower like this. That's normally how I clean them after I soak those down. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go ahead. I normally take these up right here, so I don't have to hit them again with the grinder. Then I'm going to paint it the color I want to paint it. I'll show you what I'm using for that. So this gives it that zinc looking color. It's metallic gold. These brackets, some of them I'm seeing, I know on the SVOs and the Salines, these brackets are definitely this color gold. They're definitely zinc coated. 93 Cobras, if you see the black part right back in here, that was black paint. So I had a 50 mile 93 Cobra at one time. I couldn't tell you what color the backing plates were. So if you've got a wrapper car and it's been stored properly, maybe let me know what they're supposed to look like. I'm going to do them so they look gold zinc with the metal showing, and then once I get them bolted to the rear end, I will clear coat the bare metal. Yeah, it'll still scratch and I'll probably get some rust down the road, but that's about the only way you can protect it once you've got it back together. So that's it for that. I'm gonna go ahead, get this taped up, get it painted, and let y'all see what it looks like. And while this is soaking, show you how much came off of that in like the last 5 or 10 minutes. All right, so those of you still watching, check out this bracket. It's all nice and cleaned up. Now, like I said, when you put this back on the rear end housing, you get it bolted in, you can clear coat that to eliminate the rust. It won't kill it, it'll reduce it and won't eliminate it. Wrong word there. But yeah, you can clear coat that. It will change the color just a little bit, not too bad. But yeah, so that's what the bracket looks like. It goes on the rear end housing, it bolts to the housing itself, and then the caliper bracket bolts right here. That right there. Yeah, we get the other one cleaned up, get it painted, and we'll get ready to assemble this rear end housing. So if y'all still watching, I got some bolts over here. I got these all nice and cleaned up and repainted. All that's done. The housing's repainted. I got everything ready to go back in. As soon as I get that other bracket cleaned up and a couple more parts, we'll get ready to assemble this rear end housing. So if you want to stay with me, watch this rear end build. That's awesome. All right, so I spent a couple, I don't know, 6 or 8 hours off camera cleaning up the rest of these parts. I'll show you what I got. I got everything set up, ready to put the rear end together. What I'm going to start with on the rear end is the upper bushings. We'll put those in first. Then I'm going to do the axle bearings and seals. Then I'm going to do the pinion flange and the pinion seal, and then on from there. So first I'll show you what I got sitting on the table, all cleaned up, ready to go. Got everything cleaned up, painted, looks really good. Yeah, let's check them out. All right, so everything's all laid out. Got some new fresh paper on the table here. Dust shields, I cleaned those with the same rust stuff I used. I also used a burgundy Scotch-Brite, then I painted them bare aluminum. Got them looking nice and fresh, brand new. Now those are galvanized from the factory, so if you know somebody that can re-galvanize those for you, make them look legit, but right now just aluminum paint's the best thing we got, and it matches almost perfect. Backing plates are done. I got the anti-moan brackets all cleaned up. The nuts are already painted. Got the flange all repainted and cleaned up. The shock brackets are all cleaned up. Now this is what nice galvanized looks like after that Resto stuff cleans it up. That is actual galvanized. I didn't paint that, so you see how close that aluminum paint is to galvanizing color. It's super, super close. Backing plate bolts, dust shield bolts, new axle bearings. Axle bearings, I do put a little grease in them before I put them in, just so they're not dry the first little bit when they get to going in the car. Got the new upper bushings. Snubber brackets cleaned up. All the bolts are repainted and cleaned up. New pinion flange seal, new vent seal, and new oil fill plug. All new lines and hard lines. So got all that cleaned up. I'm gonna shut the door so you can actually see what I'm doing back here. Like I said, I'm gonna start with the upper bushings. When I do those, I also put a little grease around the bushing and some in the rear end housing. So as you install it, it helps slide the bushing in. I'm just gonna use a hammer and a big socket. Like I said, they do make an install kit. I've done it this way for a long time and I've never had an issue putting them in. Axle bearings, always use I got an old bearing line. I use this to install. I'll set the new bearing in there, set that one on top of it, and then tap around the old bearing to put the new bearing in, and then just tap the new seal in. It's pretty simple. On the pinion flange, to get the original pinion flange off the front, take a yellow marker, black marker, pink marker, whatever, mark the old, because a lot of people will replace the crush sleeve. I don't do that when I'm putting the original rear end back together unless I've changed the gears. This one I'm going to use the original sleeve. I'll mark the nut and the pinion itself with the yellow paint marker. So when I tighten the new flange back down, I make sure that lines up, and then I'll take it another about 1/8 of an inch to put a little bit more pressure on that crush sleeve, so it'll tighten that down. You don't have any walk back and forth on the pinion itself. So a lot of guys will say, oh, you got to replace the crush sleeve. I only do that when I put new gears in. I don't use it when I'm doing the originals. There's no need for that. Just make sure you recrush it just a little bit. You're not gonna tighten the pinion down, because these rear ends, if it's original, it's got some wear on the bearing, it's got some wear on the gear, so tightening it down a little bit more, it's not going to hurt it any at all. So that's just how I've done it over the years, and I've never had any issues whatsoever. So yeah, let me get the camera set up, get the garage door set up. We'll go ahead and get these bushings put in. If you're still watching and you're learning anything, let me know. All right, so I got this little bit of grease all around the bushing. I put some inside the housing as well, where the bushing is going to set in. Socket about this size, about like that, and then you're just going to walk it in with a hammer. It's not hard, it's pretty easy. So yeah, I know they make a install tool, but right now I don't have one, so let's get this thing installed. Alright, hope y'all can see fairly well. Now normally, like I said, there's a little bit of grease inside the housing, some on the bushing. Just kind of set the bearing or the socket up there and just kind of tap it in. See how easy that's going in? It's almost all the way in already. Now, a lot of you guys and gals are probably asking, how do I know how far to walk that bushing in? Now, I always keep my old ones I've cut out. If you watched the prior video. Now these here, these look to be a little bit over 1/4 inch of bushing left on the outside of the housing itself. So it's almost all the way in. I normally set them up a little bit tighter than what these are. These actually stick out a little bit further than most that I've seen. Alright, that's probably about normally where I like them. Right about there. Now when I get this done all together, I'll show you how far it's set in. If you look, that's just about perfect. So you see how long that took? If I was using an install tool, I'd still be trying to set the damn tool up. Now you do want to be careful, don't get it, I've got probably a 5-pound hammer, not a 20-pound sledge. Because the last thing you want to do is break one of these ears off on the housing. Now, I've never had that happen. I said that, I'm liable to break this one off now. Let's hope not. Just tap it to get it started. You don't want to whack on it hard the first time. And don't whack on it hard. Anyway. All right, now, if you want to get perfect, get your tape measure out. I normally just take an index finger, stick it in between here. It's pretty much perfect. But yeah, you see how quick that was? Didn't take a long time at all. Like I said, if I was using an install tool, I'd probably still be trying to put those bushings in there. Now, housing's all nice and cleaned up and painted. You see where I got my jack stand set with some rags on them? I do that because if I get a scratch there, the lower control arm's going to sit there and it's easy to touch up and I don't have to repaint the whole axle tube. This one's the same way, and I'll put a center support right here. So, that's it for the diff bushings. What was that, a couple minutes? Even camera time, a couple minutes. One of the easiest things to do. So now on this rear end, I've probably got off camera and on camera, I've probably got about 25 hours cleaning this up, sanding, painting, brackets, fittings, and all that stuff. So doing one of these right does take some time. If you're willing to do it, just do it right. So yeah, all right. So now we're gonna do the axle bearings. We're gonna get them cleaned up. Well, they're already brand new, so I have to clean them up. We're gonna get those put in. And that also is pretty simple. So normally, this is an old bearing I took out, and this is one of the new ones. I normally just set the new one in the housing, set this one on it, and just tap around it. Just as simple. Make sure up in here it's getting cleaned out. You ain't got no shenanigans up in there. Huh. Ah, my axle tube's got a little dent right there. I have to straighten that up. Let me pause that real quick. Get that fixed up real quick. Hold on a second. All right, so on that, before I painted it, the axle housing fell on the ground, so it bent the tube down the edge just a little bit where the seal goes in, so I had to tap that out. So got that straight. That only took a few minutes. So set the new bearing in there, set the old one on top, and just kind of walk it around. You don't have to hit it really hard. They go in way easier than they come out, trust me. Make sure this thing's recording here. Okay, cool. Sorry about that. Couldn't tell if it was recording or not. So when you're tapping it in with the old bearing is going to be about flush with the axle tube housing. It may stick out like 1/8 of an inch once you have the new bearing seated. You'll be able to feel it. Alright. And if you want to, you can take an extension and tap around that bearing just to make sure it's all the way in there. But yeah. So that took what, a couple minutes? Nothing major. Alright, so that's one done. I'm going to get the seal, put the seal in. Now there's really no trick to the seal. You just set it in there and tap it around. The seal I normally want flush with the axle tube. Once it's in there. Oh, now on these seals and every kind of seal like this, there's a metal spring on the back. It keeps the seal tight. Always check and make sure that metal ring's back there. I did a timing chain cover one time and it was missing, and found out the hard way after I had it back together. Alright, so that's just like brand new money. You get the other side done, and then we'll move on to the pinion flange and get all that ready, steady, and set up. So I'm going to pause you guys while I put this other seal. I'm sure you don't want to watch both sides. Alright, so taking the pinion out is pretty easy. A lot of people freak out about taking the pinion flange off. I don't know why. So what I'll normally do, like I said, I get a yellow paint marker like this. Make sure it's working a little bit. I'll mark the tip of the pinion about right there. I hope you guys can see that. Yeah. And I'll mark the threads in the same spot. And I'll mark the pinion nut in the same spot. So when I go to tighten that back down, once I got the new seal and pinion flange on, I'll make sure that's lined up, see how tight it is, and if it's good and tight, I'll take it about another 1/8 inch just to crush that crush sleeve just a little bit more, just to keep everything good and tight. So how I hold the differential, I use the center pin. I'll stick it back in the diff just a little bit to where the pin hits the back of the housing as you're turning it. And then you just use a ratchet. The force will hold that pin in place. You just push down on it. And that's it. Now that it's loose, you take your pin out of the back of the housing. Like I said, you just put it in about that far, so when the carrier rotates, it catches on the housing like this and holds the carrier in place so you can get the pinion bolt or pinion nut loose. Well, I'm gonna have to keep letting that do its job. Still a little tight. Now you can use an impact, but I'm trying not to make any noise. For the guys in the comments, just say just use an impact. So this is a good time to check your pinion bearing, the front anyway, when you got it out. This car's only got like 28,000 actual miles on it, but it's been sitting a long time. You got a bunch of wrapper cars out there that have been sitting for years with no miles on them. Just imagine what they look like inside, with all the moisture and stuff. So there's my paint mark. If you can see that yellow paint mark on that castle nut. Now, most of the time, this pinion flange comes off super easy. So now's a good time to take the pin out. Most of the time they come right off. It's almost off there. So as you're tapping it, don't keep hitting it in one spot. Turn the pinion to get that off of there. Most of the time these come off super easy. Like I said, this has been sitting a long time, so there you go. So that's the old one. Looks kind of nasty. These Ford Performance ones, they're identical, brand new. I think it was 49 bucks from late model. Now, getting the seal out, it's not that big a deal. Use a chisel. Now, walk it out. Now, keep an eye on your jack stand support. Mine's about to walk its way out of there. Alright. That's it to taking the seal out. Like I said, that's usually super easy. Now, this is a good time. You can check your pinion bearing. There's a washer in here they call it an oil slinger. Keeps most of the oil from penetrating that seal. Helps with the leaks. Most of the time you can just shake that pinion and that bearing should come right out. It's super loose. Let me get a straight screwdriver real quick. I thought I was prepared. There we go. Now those splines, how it came off kind of hard, that pinion, the bearing's kind of coming off a little hard too. Let me try, this one's got a little more strength to it. I don't want to hit on it with anything because I'm going to reuse it. Let's see if I can do this way. He's coming. So some of this stuff just aggravates. It should come off pretty easy. I'm going to clean this bearing up really good once I get it out. Alright, so it's fighting me. I'm going to pause real quick. I'm sure you guys want to fight this bearing for a minute. I'll let you know how long it takes. All right, so literally that took like 2 seconds. That's how it works. You put somebody off camera. I went and got another screwdriver the same thickness as the one I had, and it slid right off. Now, this is a good time to check your bearings. This bearing looks really good. You can tell it's an old bearing and it's been setting, but there's no pits, there's no hot marks, there's no rust in it. I am going to take a burgundy Scotch pad and clean up on the inside of the bearing and a little bit on the rollers. So as you can see, there's no rust or nothing in there. It's a good strong bearing. Got to clean that up some. So let me get this cleaned up real quick. All right, so in the bearing, just a little PB blaster. We'll put a little bit around it. Now you'll get some metal staining over stuff just sitting for years and years. Like I said, I got burgundy cloth. See how nice that's cleaning up? I don't know if you can see that in there. I'll walk around the outside of the bearing. Like I said, just take some of the nastiness off. So this thing's been sitting for a long time. This is the tedious stuff that nobody wants to watch. It takes forever and nobody wants to film. I got some brake cleaner somewhere. There it is. I'll hit this with some brake clean when I'm done. And then throw it back in there. Now, if you see pitting in these bearings, you want to replace them. And I don't mean like super small pitting. But these don't have any in them whatsoever. Thing cleaned up really nice. So carrier bearings were kind of the same way. I'll take them apart. All right, so I'll show you this real quick. If you can see up in there, you can see how nice that cleaned up in there. Just a little bit burgundy Scotch-Brite. Bearings, no pits. They're a little dirty. I need to wash them. No pitting whatsoever in that bearing. Really nice. So I'll get that cleaned out with some brake cleaner. Let's see. I was using it to kill a hornet yesterday. I don't know where it went. There it is. So go ahead and clean this out. Put it back in there. Also, check your bearing race up inside and make sure it doesn't have any rust or anything in it. Looks really good. Now you're going to see, if it's been sitting a long time, you see like little lines from a bearing just sitting when they don't move. That's nothing to be alarmed about. That's just common. Now, don't forget to put your oil slinger back in there before you put the seal back on it. Doesn't matter which way it goes in. Just set it back in there like so. Now, again, this seal is just like the axle seal. It's got a metal ring around the back. It's like a spring. Keeps the seal tight. Make sure that's in there. Now these can be a little bit of a pain in the butt. These seals here, sometimes they go in easy, sometimes they go in hard. About the heck started. There we go. Now once you get it started, You can use essentially anything you want, socket with this side, and just tap it in. Walk it around. That's done. Now, these new Ford seals, and I think most of the other ones do, the Tin Can and all those other ones, they come with a little bit of grease around the seal on the inside for the pinion. So you don't really have to put anything on there. When you put that back in, now if you want to tap on it a little bit to get it started, I don't mean beat on it, because what you're doing is you're hitting the pinion against the ring gear. So you just want to tap it a little bit. Just so you got some thread showing. Do not hit that thing hard. You're going to start back with your pinion nut. Again, put your pin back in your differential, your carrier. Spin it back around. Actually, that should be this way because we're going to go the opposite direction. Alright. So let me get on this side. Over here. Tighten this down. Now, sometimes you'll get a pinion flange that just slides right in there, no problem. But most of the time they go in like this. They go in about an inch and then you just got to tighten them down. Now when you're tightening this, pay attention, there's a plastic piece on the back. You'll see when it gets close to the housing, when your flange starts getting tight where you want it to be. So now it's snug, it's tight. I'll pull the pin out. Now on the correct setup rear end, they make dial indicators and all that other stuff, but when it's factory set up, you can kind of hold the ring gear and you should feel it just kind of back and forth. You can hear that little bit of clunk. Now, right here is my paint. I don't know if you can see that. It's right here on the threads and it's over here on the castle nut. So what I'm going to do is get that where they line up and see what it feels like. Alright, so that right there is a factory setting on the pinion. You can hear that little bit of tap, probably about 2/1000. Just wiggle backlash by your hand. Now, the crush sleeve keeps this all tight and keeps it together. It basically keeps pressure on the pinion nut and the pinion gear itself so nothing comes loose. So that it's already tightened down to this yellow mark from the factory, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten it probably, I'm going to go about 1/8 inch and see what it feels like. You should be able to feel that crush sleeve move a little bit through the ratchet, if you know what I'm talking about. I can feel it right there. Alright. So that's just about perfect. I went about probably almost 1/4 inch. I might take it just a little bit further, just so I know that the crush sleeve is holding it. Because right now, it's not tight at all on the bearing. And that's mainly what you're worried about is your bearing preload on the front. Like I said, they make an indicator for that. Yeah, okay. So that's good. So about right at a 1/4 inch. And that's it. So I'm gonna pause this. I'm gonna show you the bearing, all that other stuff, what it looks like, and the paint mark, so you guys can see that really well. Let's see. Hold on a second. Be right with you. All right, so I'm gonna show you guys real quick the paint marks on the pinions, the axle seals where I got them set up, and how I hold the pinion in place. I'll show you the pin little method on the back side so you can see that. And I'm gonna go ahead, start with the backing plates. Next, I'm still cleaning my axles up a little bit in the rust cleaner, and I'm gonna clean up the housing a little bit, go eat some lunch, and then we'll finish the video up. Finish this video up, thank goodness. So hold on a second, let's check this out real quick. All right, so on your pinion, these are my paint marks. This is where the pinion was originally set and was over here. I turned it an extra 1/4 inch. Now, pressure, they make an indicator so you can feel how much load is on that front bearing. I normally, just a little bit of pressure, not much. Yeah, I know I need to buy the right tool. But for those of us who don't have it, that's how it is. Now, upper bushings, super easy to go in. Turn out really nice. Now, seals, super nice, bearing all the way in there. I normally put them flush. You can put them in a little bit further than that. The edge of this is tapered, so you can tap it in a little bit further where you can see the tapered edge. Some guys do that as well. Now, on the axle, the differential, what I'm talking about is normally just slide that pin a little bit, like about, I don't know, 2 inches, then turn the carrier. So the carrier and the pin keep the pinion from turning. So that makes it pretty easy. So, all right, so this is a long ass video, excuse the profanity. So after I go eat some lunch, fat man gotta eat, I'm gonna come back down, we'll get the axles put in, we'll get the backing plates put on for the caliper brackets, we'll get the diff fluid put in it, get the axles back in it, and button this buddy up. So stick with me. All right, so okie dokie, I got back from lunch, feeling the old fat man good. I did cheat, I assembled a little bit of the rear end, I'll show you what I got done. And I only did this because most of the stuff I've showed you taking it apart. So to show you putting it together is kind of redundant. Now, I had a bucket over there my axles were soaking in. I did clean those up. I used the same process as I used on the backing plates. I used the burgundy Scotch-Brite on that little roll lock disc. Now, I did let these axles soak in that rust dissolve for probably 45 minutes, and it took all the rust off. I cleaned it up with a little roll lock. I knocked the studs out first and then put them back in. They look like brand new axles now. There's a little light surface rust on the back side, not much, I'll show you that. But compared to what they look like, if you go back to the first video and you see how nasty this damn rear end look, these look awesome. So I'll let y'all see it real quick what I got done. Backing plates on, pins back in, I put Loctite on the center bolt, and I'll show you all that too. All right, so check it out. Now, she's looking pretty good. She's not together yet. Now, see that, how nice that axle looks? Got all that rust off of there. Now, back in here, you do see a little bit of surface rust right in here still, but that's really about it. So yeah, clean up really nice. Got the backing plates on. I got the moan brackets put on. Now on the moan brackets, what I normally do, I normally slide the bolts in through the back and then tighten on these two little 13 half-inch nuts evenly. That way it's set, and just make sure they're loose when you take them out, so your caliper bracket doesn't fight you when you put that back together. Now, man, look at that ass. Woo-wee. Center pin, put the C-clips in, then put the center pin back in. Again, put a little bit of Loctite on that nut, or the bolt. Not a lot, just a little bit. I think I torqued it down to like 15 foot-pounds. Not very much, you don't want to snap that. I did clean up the bracket for the brake line. I put my new vent cap on. And yeah, there's that other axle. Look how nice that is. So, super nice. Looks really good. Now, I won't say it looks brand new, but it looks super, super nice. I did run to O'Reilly's. They turned my original rotors for me. I'll show you those real quick. I'm babbling about it. So I got these. I cleaned up the hats for them before they turned them. They turned really nice. These only had like I said, the car's only got 28,000 miles on it. They turned out really, really good. I'm going to paint the hats black and all the vents down here black. I'll tape these up, paint them, and then untape them. They should look brand new. So, all right, I'll set this camera up. If you guys are still watching this long ass video, I'll go ahead, put the brake lines on, the rubber lines on. I'm going to put the diff cover back on it. Get the RTV on that, let that probably do that first. So I'll do the diff cover, center line for the brake hose, the center hose first, and yeah, just get this thing knocked out. All right, so sorry about that. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to do the new fill plug, brand new Ford fill plug. If you remember, there's a blue paint mark right here on the housing. What I'm using is old Ford blue, and it's pretty simple. Just hit it one shot. That's it. Give you a nice factory looking paint mark. And then I'm going to put the new fill plug in. Now these new Ford fill plugs, they already got sealant on them, so you don't have to put any kind of stop leak or anything on those plugs or anything like that. All right, so I don't know if you can see that. Got a nice blue overspray, new fill plug. Once I get this assembled, I'll show you the finished product. What I'm gonna do now is I already cleaned off the rear end housing right here, the diff cover. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put my axle grease in there now, real quick. Another benefit to doing it this way, you fill it, put your RTV on it, let it set overnight. You find out if you got any leaks on your pinion seal. Or if it's really bad, you'll find out right now. Now I normally put some around both side caps so the bearings can get some axle grease in them. Right now I got 2 quarts. Now if you got a carbon fiber clutch pack and you rebuilt it, you can also put friction modifier in there. That does work really well. I don't see nothing coming out. That's a good sign. Now first, I always put 2 quarts when I build one, and then when it's in the car, I'll check it to make sure it's enough. Normally 2 quarts is usually right on the money. I've seen people say 3 quarts or 2.5 to 3, or because right now when you look down in the rear end, it's about right in the bottom of the base of the axle tubes. All right, so everything's clean. It's on there. Now, the urethane, I always like to use the ultra black for the diff cover. Now, what you guys always not using a gasket? Ford don't use a gasket. These rebuild kits you guys get come with the gaskets. I'm telling you, do not use a gasket. It's going to leak. RTV, ultra gray, ultra black. Do not use a paper gasket on these rear end housings. They will leak for sure. Now I just put this nice good bead all the way around. You don't want to get carried away. I'm going to pat it down anyway once I get all the way around. Now keep in mind, after this is done, I'm not going to flip it over and let the fluid get on the fresh RTV. You don't have to put a bunch on there, but make sure you got enough. Like I'm a little light right here on this side. Don't try to push it down in the holes because you want your bolt to be able to go down in the hole. If you put RTV down in there, it's got nowhere to go. You can compress air, but you can't compress a liquid or a solid. I want a little bit more over here on this side. Not much. Maybe a little bit in here. clean both the cover and the housing off with paint thinner. Got all that off of there. Probably gonna take these. Make sure I got all that off of there. So you got all nice, clean. Now, don't over torque these bolts. That's where a lot of people get carried away. They over torque these bolts, and what they end up doing is warping the housing, or not the housing, but the cover itself. And that's what causes leaks when you start over torquing stuff. I'm a 1 or 2 ugga dugga on a diff cover. Notice I put my gear plate back on there, tell you what gear's in it. I said a lot of people, when they do gears, they'll leave that off if they put gears in it. Put the tag back on there. I know it may have 373s in it. If you want, write 373 on the tag, but down the road, you start talking about restorations and all that other stuff, tags are really important. So I'm just going to walk it down easy with this. I'm going to torque it. Got my ratchet over there. Tighten my hand. I said a 2 ugga dugga. That's 2 right there. That's a 1 ugga dugga. Well, that one ain't tight yet. Just the one with the tag. The tag, you got to be careful. It likes to turn when you tighten it. I don't get carried away on that one. There we go. So what's an ugga dugga? 1, 2 ugga dugga. Or you can get out the torque specs. What I like to do, to make sure I don't miss any, is to start at the top and work my way around. See, that one's still a little loose. Tight now. Alright, that's good. Now, take a clean rag. I only got a couple clean rags. Wipe the diff cover off really well. And this is where we're going to blend in the diff cover and the bolts with the housing. Just be careful, because you're going to have maybe some grease off your hands or whatever. So essentially, we're going to repaint the whole diff cover. Now, you can go back and scuff it if you want, if it's been sitting a couple days. This single stage sticks really, really well. Now this plate, I don't like the way it's sitting. I like it to sit straight, kind of up on the housing. There. And what I'll do, I don't want to paint those new bushings because they're bare metal. You can if you want. I'll just put a little, that fresh rag there. I got 2 earlier. Cover that housing like that. Got a brand new can of black from the paint store. Make sure we didn't miss nothing. Now, first coat, just kind of mist it on. That way if it's going to fish out, you'll know it. If you got any grease or anything on there. Alright, so I'm going to let that set for a minute. Let that cure. So if it does want to fish eye on me, All right, so I'm gonna let that cure for a few minutes. While I do that, I'm gonna set everything up and get ready to put the lines on, and then we'll get you guys back on camera. So like I said, I'm gonna let that set, let it cure up, and then put a coat on it. All right, so that's tacked up for like 5 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and put some heavy paint on it. I don't know if you can see it or not. See if I can spin that a little bit. Well, y'all thought this was powder coated. Definitely not. Like I said, rattle can is, if you can't use a rattle can, hell yeah. Now make sure you get both sides of those bolts because they were bare metal, except for the two that were on the diff. Now that looks awesome. Pull that off. Now, all that looks good, nice and blended in. These are still bare metal. Now these bushings, because they're bare metal, you can clear coat them just like the backing plates once you're done. If you want to do that, just make sure they got grease on them. You're going to want to clean them first, because if you don't, they're going to fish out pretty good. Now, what I'm going to start with now is the rubber hoses, which are over there. I forgot to grab them. And the bolts, I'm going to get them put on the quad shock brackets. I'm going to grab those real quick. Sorry about that. They are right here, and looking for the bolts, and they are right there. Sorry, not too professional today. It's just kind of how my channel works. Now, these hoses, they go like this. This is the right-hand side, this metal bracket. If you took it apart, you should know how to do it. Bolt goes through that right there. Goes around, there's a clip right there I already put back in the quad shock bracket. Sorry I didn't film that. My bad. Now you're just going to want to put those on finger tight. You don't have to crank them down. Mainly because you want to leave them a little bit loose so when you go to put the metal line on there, you don't have to fight with it. The thing about that rust eliminator, all your bolts go in nice and easy now. All the rust is gone. You don't have to spin them with your fingers. All right, so now that I got that on there, I'm gonna go ahead and try to rotate this rear end. Hopefully it don't fall. So you guys can watch how I do the brake lines. Keep in mind that is fresh paint, so don't try to grab that. Managed to do that really well. All right, now on your brake lines, you do have the center one first. I normally put that in. Again, don't tighten it down. There's a hole right here in the diff, which my jack stand is under. I gotta move. There's a bolt nut that goes on the bottom. So let me move this to the other side. Oops, sorry. It goes right here. That's for the snubber bracket. I don't know what I was thinking. Now, the nut that goes on the bottom, you just start it. You don't have to tighten it down because we do have lines we need to feed first. Now, I have noticed this is the second set. Project Field Snake, I use the same setup. I had to do a little bit of bending when I did them. So I fed this one first on the housing. Make sure I got them on the right side. Might have them on the wrong side. Nope, that's correct. Okay. Yeah, this side here I had to bend a little bit. Like right in here, it's got kind of the wrong bend on it. Now, let me grab my original line, see how it's bent. Should have done that first before I put that in there. So you see how this has a twist in it right here? These repo lines they don't have quite that hard of a twist on them. They're very close, but they're a little bit off. Okay, that's about right. Get that started. Okay. Now, there's two little aluminum tabs that hold the brake line to the rear end housing that wraps over, and just there's a little 8mm bolt that goes in there. When we put it on there, flip it back on, bend it back down. This will help you straighten that line also and get it where it needs to be. Doing this in the cars is probably a pain in the butt. Or ass, whichever you want to say. Alright. So now you've got this held there. This is where it needs to be. These are all on there. This is not extremely tight, but it makes it where it's going to be easy to bend that line now where you want it. Or how you want it. So keep in mind, that quad shock bracket, or not the quad shock, the upper control arms, got to go in between there, so you got to make sure you got enough room for that. So that one started, that's good. I want to say the driver's side didn't require much bending at all. It was pretty on the money. Now, the driver's side, it has two brackets it does go in. You got this one here that I installed, and then this one. So this one you want to be careful. This is where you want to not scratch anything up. Now that tab is bent. You'll have to tap it down with a hammer. Let's see if I have my hammer. I'm going to use this and this. And try not to scratch my paint. Alright, that looks awesome. Alright. Kind of bend that up. Move this one. Pop this back over the housing. Bolt back in there. Yeah, the passenger side fit really well. The reproduction line. The driver's side not so good. Alright. Good deal. So, off camera, I'm going to go ahead and tighten these bolts, these down, those down, get it all together, and take the camera off of there, and we'll walk around and see what we got so far. So let me get these tightened now, and I'll be right back with y'all. Okay, so this video is almost over. So those of you who are still watching, I really appreciate it. I opened the garage door. I put the dust shields on the brackets. They're just hand tight. I'm not done because the rotors aren't finished. Now the dust shields and the calipers, those normally go on the car once the rear end is in the car. That way you don't scratch or bend the dust shields. Same with the rotors, and it weighs a whole lot less as well. When I put the rear end in the car, I'll video that and show you how I do that. It's kind of just got to be careful when it's freshly painted. I got this together. I want to show you some spots on the repo calipers. I love the way they look. The only thing I don't like, the banjo bolts for the rubber hoses are different size. One's a 10 mil, one's a 7/16. And where the rubber hose goes on the actual caliper itself, you're going to have to take some material off where the rubber hose metal part seats on our caliper. And I'll show you that. So I'll quit flapping and show you what this looks like. It's been a long ass video. I do apologize. So check it out. Hell yeah. Now open the garage door so you guys can see the finished product here. See how nice it looks now. What I was talking about right here, where this metal part seats on the caliper, this boss right here where it's supposed to set into that boss, there's too much material on that boss, so you're gonna have to take this off and take some material off this metal boss on the caliper itself. Other than that, I love those repo calipers. I wish they had a Ford emblem in it, but it is what it is. Got all that nice and clean. All that looks good. And look at that cover. Everything looks good. Now again, this rattle can restoration here. Like I said, this one was a 10 mil head, and the one on the driver's side is a 7/16. I'll probably go to one of the parts stores and get some that match. So yeah, all that looks super nice. I did put the snubber on it, and there's the blue paint mark on there. Now I did the bottom also. See if I can get under where y'all. Anyway, I can show that later. But yeah, that shit looks hot. Now I still got to put the brackets on for the shocks. I'll do that once it's in the car. That's not a big deal. So yeah. Now, first off, thanks for watching this video. I know it's been kind of beating this desk and milking this rear end. I don't know what you want to call it, but that's how long it takes. Now keep in mind, I ain't show you the full work on this rear end, how long it actually takes to do stuff like this. So for me to take the time and video this, and I could have knocked this out probably half the time if I didn't video the stuff. This is probably a weekend project if you wanted to do this. If your rear end looks kind of nasty, just order the parts, have them on hand, so when you take it apart, you can put it back together. It is time consuming. It's time consuming as hell. I probably got 30 hours in this rear end, and that's not a lie. People say, how much you put in restoring one? A lot. So again, I appreciate you guys watching this video. If you got any questions, you know how to hit me up, foxjunk73@gmail.com, or questions, comments below. I can tell you part numbers on all this stuff, what can I use, what color paint I use, yada yada yada. It's just tedious, but anybody can do it. Just take your time and go slow at it. If it's your first time taking one apart and you got any questions, hit me up. I don't have a problem answering that question. Again, I apologize. It's a long video. Again, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. If you hadn't, please do so. This car's one of those cars. I'm just going to work on it when I got time. And again, remember, it's not just junk. It's Fox junk. Y'all have a good day.